Hello, adventurers, and welcome to the second February podcast for our second season of the Random Adventurers podcast. My name is Nate, and I'm here in the studio with Ranger Liz.
Hello.
And Lich Lord Bryan.
Hello.
And seeing as how February 14th is the day this video is coming out, we're going to be talking about one of the most important things. Love. And then we're going to be talking a lot about building your own lore. So, romance.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it in your games, for the love of God, don't do it in your games.
It doesn't work. It's
one thing if the people who are doing the romantic thing are actually in the relationship. It's another thing if they're not. That just can become awkward.
It can. Just...
Well, let him continue on. Our advice is don't do it.
Remember when setting up your world that romantic relationships do happen. And you need to consider what kind of relationships are common in your world, what are considered acceptable and what aren't considered acceptable.
Okay, he's going a different angle than we thought he was. We had discussed this prior to it.
Yeah.
He's going a different angle than we thought he was going with this topic.
I still go with don't do it, though.
No, I think you can think about what kind of relationships in there, but I would also point out to a lot of things. Okay, it's fine if you want to think about like maybe what kind of half races might come about. But my thing is, you're here to adventure and save the kingdom and do all that, not bang the NPC. You can, I guess, portraying there. I guess there are going to be families you might want to portray in your thing, in your world. So I guess it's something to think about what kind of families might exist. But outside of that, there's really no need to invest too heavily in it.
I will say don't invest too heavily in the idea of romance, though I will say that if it happens naturally with the characters, I have seen it happen and it not turn out awkward before. But it has to come out naturally with the players, not you just going, I'm bored and I want to bang your character. That just is not right.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily saying in the party kind of relationships as well. That happens, it happens. Don't force it. Don't let anybody force the issue. That just gets weird. But if, for example...
We were less enthused with this topic than he was.
For example...
If, for example, your party comes to a city and one of them decides that there's a chance that their character may start to have feelings for the barmaid or the whatever damsel in distress.
How many times have you portrayed the random damsel in distress that makes them actually interesting enough to want to form any type of emotional attachment between your character and them?
Well, I'm working on that, okay?
I'm gonna have to say when those
even in professional video games, I've never had that type of feeling for any character before.
I don't know, Zelda and Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, I've never played that. I've played a bunch of RPGs, and any time where it's happened, I've always been like, okay, let's see what happens if I do this. Not, oh, this is really interesting. No, it doesn't work.
I will have to say I did get interested in Cliff from Harvest Moon, but they allowed me to build a relationship with him.
Yes.
But I will also say that one night I was playing extremely late and I was very much sleep deprived because I was trying to play through original Harvest Moon as quickly as possible, and I was watching Jack Sprite one night at 4 a.m. and I was like, wow, he's kind of hot when he's swinging his axe like that. Then I promptly went to bed thinking I was never should do that again. I was staring at pixels and thinking they were hot.
Yes. So.
Because every teenage boy you played through Tomb Raider.
Getting back to my topic, you need to consider what relationships would be considered acceptable. For example, a human and an orc.